Welcome to the Code with Jason meetup. Today it's just me and my new friend John. Welcome, people of YouTube. Welcome, John. Today I'm going to continue working on my ChatGPT plugin that I've been working on. John, would you happen to have seen this before at all? This ChatGPT Vim plugin I've been working on?
No, Jason, I haven't seen the plugin.
Okay. Okay. Well, I will show you what it's all about, and I'll do a little demo here. So here's the idea. I'm gonna get two Tmux panes going here. Okay, and I'll make the font a little bit bigger. Yeah. Okay. So here's the idea. It's a Vim plugin that integrates with the OpenAI API. So I can do something like I'm gonna say write me an RSpec test for a program that factors numbers. This is down at the bottom there. For example, if given the number 8, the expected return values are 1 and 8 and 2 and 4, because 1 times 8 is 8 and 2 times 4 is 8. So I'm going to send this to OpenAI, and if it works correctly, we should get a test file that appears in Vim here. Okay, and we do. And then I'm going to run another command that will run our test for us. Okay, and not surprisingly, it fails because this test calls this object called factor, but we haven't defined any such object. So I'm going to run a command that will send this failure message to GPT. And then again, if it does what it's supposed to, yeah, we get the test. We get some code to make this failure message go away. So again, I'm going to run the command to run this test. Okay, we still get the same error because we're not including this file. So I'm going to manually add that part. Okay, we'll run that and see what happens. Okay, now we get a different error. So I will send this to GPT. And if the right thing happens, our application code should get updated. Um, and that kind of worked, but it put it in the wrong tab. Um, okay, so I guess we have our work cut out for us for today. We have to fix that. Okay, so let's take a look at the response we got from the OpenAI API. Because the first question I'm asking myself is like, is the API response even what I think it is? And I have some logs for this exact purpose. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so this is my most recent request and response. Um, Starting like right here. So I'm just going to look at the response. So you can see the content on this line here of the response. It says factor.rb, class factor, blah, blah, blah. So to me, that looks right. So GPT behaved correctly. It's just that my program behaved incorrectly. Luckily, I have some tests. So I'm going to run my entire test suite first of all, just to make sure I'm starting from where I think I'm starting. By the way, this is a Python project. Okay. Um, I'm going to open up the relevant test file. I think it's editor test. Actually, I don't think I opened the right one. I think it's insert code block test. Yeah. Okay. So, John, I have various scenarios here. Looks like I have 4 different scenarios. I'll kind of run through these real quick. Um, John, do you happen to be a Vim user?
I'm not a Vim user, no. I've been writing a lot of tests recently, but so I'm not a Vim user, but no.
Okay. So I'll make sure to explain some of the terminology. It says when the current buffer is empty. So in Vim, a buffer and tab is kind of the same thing. Tab is maybe the more colloquial way of referring to it, and buffer is the more technical term. Um, so when the current buffer is empty and we're inserting a code block for a new file called martin.rb, the result is that the current buffer is martin.rb. So basically, when we have a totally blank slate and we get a new file, we end up with the current buffer being that file.
Okay.
When the current buffer is not empty and we insert a code block for a new file called martin.rb, then the content of the martin.rb buffer gets replaced with the inserted code block. Okay. I actually don't completely understand this one because is the current buffer called martin.rb or is it called something else? I think it's called something else, but I'm going to not worry about that for the moment. Okay. When some content exists in some tab and we insert a code block into a different tab, then the original tab is untouched. Okay. And then lastly, when some content exists in tab A and we insert a code block into tab B and we navigate to tab A and we insert another code block into tab B, oh, this doesn't seem like it's finished. It doesn't have an assertion. Okay, well, let's fix that. Let's see. We want the content for tab B. Okay. Hmm. How do we I think I want to make 2 assertions here, maybe. I'm going to get help from ChatGPT. Okay. Um, Help me add an assertion that says the content of tab A is this is some test code. Okay. So it is asking me some questions. Yeah, this is not right. Kind of surprised it couldn't tell that this is Python, not Ruby.
Um,
Yeah, we're gonna say something, John?
yeah, no, I can see it just it made some assumption about it being Ruby.
Yeah.
But that was it shouldn't be taking any information from your previous history, right? Other chats.
Yeah, well, I do have in my custom instructions, I might have something about Ruby. I don't remember. It could be getting it from that. Um, okay. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna give it all this. Use this as a clue. Okay, now it picked up on the fact that I'm using Python and PyTest. Okay. Okay, but I don't know what the current buffer is. Is the current buffer going to be what we're calling tab A or tab B? I'm going to ask ChatGPT.
In your experience, Jason, would there be a case for making two separate tests out of this, or is it better than one test?
I think I probably will end up doing two separate tests, asserts one that makes the assertion for tab A and another that makes the assertion for tab B. Okay. It's confused about the point of the assertion. I don't want to assert that I'm on tab A. I want to go to tab A and make an assertion about the content. Okay. I'm going to say I want to keep the setup phase of the test distinctly separate from the assertion phase. Here's the setup phase. Add an assertion below that explicitly switches to tab A and asserts that its content is this is some test code. Okay, so apparently that's how we switched to a certain tab. Okay, so we go to calculator spec and we assert that the content is this is some test code. Okay, so I'm going to run my tests. Okay, and the tests all pass. I'm going to say tab A still contains test code. And I'm going to create another test. Whoops. I'm going to say tab B contains the application code. I'm going to switch to calculator.rb and assert that the content is puts 2 plus 2 equals 4. Okay, just to see. Okay, I wanted to make sure my test was
Yeah.
valid. Yeah, okay. So it's interesting that that passes because that kind of seems inconsistent from the behavior we saw at the very beginning where the content was getting inserted into the wrong tab.
What
But
would
in
be,
any case, what's that?
what, I'm just wondering, when you did that sanity check,
Mm-hmm.
by adding in the exclamations,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking the same thing that, when you're using ChatGPT to help you with testing, I guess it's even more important to have that type of I guess extra level of security, would you have you found it useful to even add those types of additional assertions in, as permanent tests, permanent parts of the test suite?
Yeah, yeah, you don't want to just blindly accept what ChatGPT gives us. Of course, we should scrutinize everything it gives us and make sure it is what we think it is. Okay, I'm gonna add this. I'm just gonna say add tests. Okay. So let's look at that log again. And let's actually run through this again and observe very carefully as we go. So again, I'm going to have it write me a test. And then after it comes up, I'm going to run it. Oops. There we go. Okay. And then I'm going to send the failure so that it gives me the application code. And we can see here, of course, that we have factor spec and factor.rb. Okay, I'm going to run this. Okay, maybe we have to do this. Okay, now we get a different failure. So I'm going to send this to GPT. Okay, and even though this is factor.rb and the other one's factor.rb, it inserts the application code into the wrong place.
Hmm.
And I'm curious, I'm going to try something. Okay, so same thing again. Write me an RSpec test, and then I'll run it. But this time I'm gonna do the same stuff still. But at the end, I'm gonna do something different. Okay, it's gonna give me the application code. Very good. Um, this seems wrong. Okay, now I'm gonna run this. Okay. But now instead of doing the send from the factor spec tab, I'm gonna do it from the factor tab. Okay, that time it worked correctly. So it seems like it's not smart enough to put the response in the correct tab. It just puts the response in whatever tab we're in. So let's yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I thought you were saying something. Okay. Go to here. Interesting. So we do navigate to tab A and then insert a code block into tab B. So maybe that's not the issue. Maybe the issue is that insert code block is actually being called on the wrong file. So let's take a look at the editor code and see what it's all about. Okay. And I actually find this a little bit hard to understand. And so I think I might refactor this before I try to fix the bug. Um, okay, so I see this if else here where we check for the presence of the code block. That could be changed to a guard clause to make that easier to understand. But I actually don't think I have a test for this no code found in response part. So maybe um let's add a test for that. Hey Nelson,
How's it going?
good. How about you?
I'm doing well.
Okay. So we'll want to test for the case where the code block is absent, and we should assert that we get no code found in response. I'm going to try this. When code block is empty, um, no code found in response. We get no code found in response. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to feed editor.py to ChatGPT, and then I'm going to give it my tests, and then I'm going to say complete the last test for me. We'll see how it does. By the way, part of the point of this plugin I'm writing is so that I can say something like, I could type this and then I could say like, complete this test for me just right here in Vim, which I realize is exactly what GitHub Copilot does. Um, but that's what I want my plugin to do. Okay, so let's see how good this is. Okay, an empty code block. When we try to insert this empty code block into a new file, okay, yeah, let's see how it does. Okay, that passed. And now let's change the code so that it doesn't do that and see if our test fails. Indeed, it does. Okay, great. So before I refactor, I'm actually going to commit this test. Add test for empty code block. Okay. I'm going to run my tests again. Okay, everything passes. Okay, so now I feel safe changing this to a guard clause. And you know what? I'm going to do this. Change the code block check to a guard clause. Let's see how well it does with that. Okay, I'm gonna blow this away and replace it with this. Delete these comments. Okay, everything still passes. And I find that ever so slightly easier to understand now. Okay, so I'm gonna commit this. Okay, now let's try to understand the remainder of this method here. So if self.isBuffer with file name open file name, self.vim command buffer file name. What does that mean? So if a buffer is open with this file name, then we go to that tab. If the tab's open with this file name, go to that tab. Okay. Otherwise, we do a new tab, but only if the current buffer is not empty. Okay. I guess that's easy enough to understand. I feel like it could be better, but I feel like the amount of change I need to do in order to make it more understandable is maybe not worth it. Okay, and then we say We fill the contents of the current buffer with the code block. Okay. And then we save the current buffer. Oh, that's a little bit surprising to me that inserting the code block also saves it. Maybe we don't want that to be that way. If it didn't work that way, how would it work instead? Let's see where insert code block is used. Okay, looks like it's used in two places. It's used in this GPT command method and in GPT send test result. Okay. What about this? What if we just don't save it at all? Okay, not all the tests still pass. 3 tests fail. Test 1 fails. Hmm. Hmm. And what is the point of this test? The current buffer is martin.rb. Okay. And before we had this, save file, self.directory and file name. Oh, yeah, I guess it is good for it to get saved because the code block comes with a file name. And if we don't save it when we insert it, then we won't be able to get the file name again. So I guess that's why I chose to do that. But maybe let's do this in a way that's more clear. I could, of course, say like insert code block and save buffer or something like that, but that feels, I don't like that. Maybe insert code block is not really the thing that's being done. And also, like, the word insert kind of implies that we're keeping one part and just like inserting something new, which is not the truth. We're like replacing it wholesale. Um, so maybe instead of insert code block, it should be save code block or something like that. Hmm. Add code block? No. I'm open to ideas if you guys have any ideas.
Replace and save, or rewrite and save or something.
The thing is, it might be new.
Hmm.
So we're not necessarily replacing or rewriting. Save code block. That's the least worst thing I can think of off the top of my head.
Or just write the code block.
That is a bit more consistent with Vim terminology. All right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to replace any instance of insert code block with write code block. Okay. And I'm going to run my tests again. They all pass now. Okay. 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 Now this last part is no longer surprising. Okay. So the problem is, Nelson, I think we went over this part before you joined. I'm going to do it again real quick. So, Nelson, are you familiar with this plugin that I'm writing in general?
Yeah, just the general idea behind it.
Okay. Um, okay, so I have my test. I'm gonna run the test. Okay, and then I'm gonna ask it to, I'm gonna send it the failure message, so it gives me the code to make the failure message go away. I'm gonna run the test again, send it again. Okay, and Nelson, if I do my send command while I'm in factor spec as opposed to factor.rb, it will put the factor.rb code in the wrong place. There, it overwrites the test instead of putting it in the existing factor file. So I got to figure out why that is. Okay, and we do have a test that says when we have a test file and an application code file, I'm calling them tab A and tab B. When we insert it into tab A, then we insert into tab B, navigate back to tab A, and then insert a code block into tab B, it does work. So that seems either my test is wrong or that's not the bug. So my question is now, if my test is right, then what could be wrong? It could be that the wrong file name is getting used, conceivably. But if I look here, the most recent file name I was given is factor.rb. So I'm being given factor.rb, but it's not inserting the content into factor.rb. I'm going to try an experiment. I'm going to do a similar thing again. I'm going to say, write me a test. Run it. I'm going to say, give me the code to make it pass. Then run it again. Okay. And now, instead of sending that again, I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to say, write me a new file called json.rb. And I'm going to see if it puts it in this first. Okay. I was seeing if it put it in the first tab or if it put it in a new tab. And it does put it in a new tab. Okay, I'm going to try this. Whoops, not get. GPT, write me a file called factor.rb. See if it replaces this or puts it in factor.rb. Yeah, it replaces this. That's interesting. The file name is right. It's factor.rb. Okay. And let me make sure that I gotta figure out what file I need to have open here. API response content. Okay. Let me make sure that it's parsing the file name correctly. Oh, interesting. The file name method says file name line dot replace file name colon empty string. That to me implies that it's expecting the word file name, which I do not see here. Okay, so let's take a look at these tests. Oh, do we not have tests for it? Okay, let's look at what tests we do have. Code block test, what's that all about? Oh, okay. So the file name for this is just a little bit misleading. It does, in fact, exercise OpenAI API response content. Okay. Now I'm going to compare our actual response to some of these other ones in this test. Okay, I'm just going to take off the end there. Okay. So this looks quite similar to these other responses. And this all works. Let me just be extra sure. Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't seem like the issue is that it's not parsing the file name, but we can maybe add some log output to help us with that. Okay, I'm getting confused, so I'm going to start over with my tabs here.
So you keep using the word tab. Um, are we sure they're tabs and not new buffers? So when you split it, it's a tab, right? And then the buffer is something else.
My understanding is that it's the same thing. Yeah, my understanding is that it's the same thing,
Okay.
but I'm like 95% sure that that's right, not 100% sure. Okay, so how do we log stuff? Okay, self.logger.write. And I see I'm initializing an API logger here. I'm just going to do this. Logger equals API logger. Logger.write. Code block file name. I'm still a little shaky on how to do string interpolation in Python. I think like this. Okay. Code block file name. All right, so I'm going to try this. Let's see. I probably don't have to do all this business I was doing before. I can just say like, write me a file called first.rb. Oh, okay. Editor object has no attribute logger. Guess that's what I get for not running my tests. Okay. Oh yeah. Shouldn't have done self.logger. Okay. Write me a file called first.rb. Okay, now let's do second.rb. So far, so good. Now, if I go back here and I say, write me second.rb, yeah, it replaces this. Okay. Okay, so it does in fact say that the code block file name is second.rb. Maybe the file name is not an exact match. Well, hang on. Okay. Let's say write me a file called third.rb. Whoops. Write me a file called third.rb. Oh no. Okay, I don't know what that's all about. Let's kind of start over with this. Write me a file called first.rb. Okay, now let's do second.rb. I'm going to back to first and say let's do third.rb. Okay, we go back to the first one and say fourth.rb. So it seems like if I give it new ones, it does just fine every time. But then if I say fourth.rb, no, if I say third.rb again, it replaces this one. So it's like if the file name matches something existing, it replaces the current buffer. What we want is if the file name matches the current buffer's file name, we replace the current buffer. But it seems to be just doing, if the current file name matches anything, then it replaces the current buffer. Let's take another look at that logic. Oh, huh. Yeah, right here. Oh, wait, no. Wait. Hmm. Yeah, it's like if there's a buffer open with the current file name, then we go to that buffer. It seems like this command is not being followed. Yeah, okay, let's do this. Another debug thing. Okay, a buffer with file name is open. Switching to buffer for file name. Okay. And here I'm going to say it's not open. All right, I'm going to run my test just for the heck of it. Okay. Okay. Um, let's do first.rb, second.rb, and second.rb again. Okay, we see the bug. Now let's look at the log. Okay, and the last thing that happened was it said a buffer with file name second.rb is open, switching to buffer for second.rb, but that didn't work. Okay, I have an idea now. Okay, so first.rb. Oh, whoops. Okay, so now we have first and second.rb. Let's redo that. Okay, now we have first and second.rb. And now I'm going to manually try to switch to the tab for second.rb. Forgot how to do it. Buffer file name. Okay, simple enough. Buffer second.rb. Whoa, okay. So that seems to be the problem. The buffer command doesn't do what I thought it did. Okay, let's ask ChatGPT. In Vim, if I have multiple tabs open, what's the command to switch to the tab with a certain file name that I specify?
Somebody. So don't you first need to get the correct buffer number, like the buffer number for that file name, and then use vim command to switch to that buffer number?
I don't know. Apparently so. Hmm. Well, that's kind of annoying. Okay, so I can say, oh, wait a second. You can use the tab command followed by a search pattern that matches the file name. Let me see what happens when I do that. Yeah, that does not work. Oh, interesting. I can do tabs. Hmm. Okay. Then I can do tab in. Okay, apparently it's one indexed. Okay. Okay. So if I somehow keep track of the index of each file, then I could do it that way. But I don't like the idea of that because then if the user manually opens a tab, then none of that's going to work anymore. It's crazy how hard this seems to be. Just go to a tab you want. Okay, I'm going to tell it the overall thing that I want to do. Here, I want to switch to the tab matching the file name. Here's what I'm trying to do. Note the comment about switching to the tab matching the file name. Lately, ChatGPT has been, yeah, doing this. Hopefully it doesn't do that too many times. I'm curious, how is this is buffer with file name open method implemented? Hmm. Okay. Okay, so we have this switch to buffer with file name method. Okay. Okay. And so I can do this. And I'm not forgetting that our test is passing, which it seems like it shouldn't be. Um, okay. So now let's. Oh, and you know what? I think I should have been reloading my plugin each time, but I've been forgetting to. Um, hmm. Sorry, bear with me a second. Okay, I'm gonna ask, do I need to reload my plugin each time I manually test it? And I don't even know how my plugin is being loaded. It's nowhere in here. What about in my vimrc? I don't see it here. Okay, apparently it just requires a restart of NeoVim. Oh yeah, and we've been seeing those log changes and stuff, so that's proof that we don't need to reload anything. Okay. So now I'm going to say write me a file called first.rb, write me a file called second.rb. And then we'll do second.rb again. And it still exhibits the buggy behavior. Okay. Hmm. Well, let's log this. Okay, switching to buffer.number. And if I want to log this, I'm going to have to make my logger accessible everywhere. And we'll wrap up shortly here. Okay. Here's first. Second. Now we'll do second again. Maybe there's a problem with the indexing. Okay. Log. Interesting. Switching to buffer 3. There is no buffer 3. Why would it be buffer 3? Okay. Let's do a couple more.
Where does the indexing start for the buffers? Does it start at 0 or does it start at 1?
Starts at 1. Okay, I'm going to start completely over here. First, second, third, fourth. And then if we go back to this first tab here, do we see an index of 5 or something else? Interesting, it's 3 again. Oh wait, but that's not what I wanted to test. Okay. Let's do third.rb, see what it gives us. Gives us an error. Seems like if we manually open a tab, it gives us an error. We'll deal with that later. Okay, first, second. Oops, I didn't spell that right, but no big deal. Third, fourth. Okay, now if we go here and say fourth, what do we get in the log? Ha, we get 7. That's interesting. So this is like totally wrong. Hmm. Buffer dot number.
From the beginning, and perhaps if you logged the number of buffers at the start, and as you progress through, you might see how they're accumulating.
Logged a number of buffers, you said?
I guess, yeah, it's a 7. I presume it starts with 0, right? And then as you create them, it increments, but there's something funky going on.
Yeah, well, it starts with 1. And so the expected number of buffers, I mean, there's the number of buffers and then there's the indexes, but the expected number of buffers would be 4. And the highest index I would expect is 4. And so the fact that it's 7 is a complete mystery. But we're about at time here, and it looks like this mystery might be a little deeper than, just 2 or 3 more minutes of investigation. So I think I'll pick this up for next time. Okay. Well, thanks guys for joining me, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.